Man, welcome to the Pecha Kucha Podcast. I want to start just by asking you to introduce yourself, but also describe what you do.
My name is Martin Irvine. I am director of Accelerator Productions and co-founder of One creative consultancy. What I do, I've probably a few different roles. Ultimately, what that has led up to be over my journey is probably more storytelling in a overall view, helping people tell their story, but also position themselves using that story to stand out or ultimately create a category of one within whatever industry that they're in. I realized working through the fitness industry, helping online coaches not just stand out within a saturated or busy market, but stand out in a way that they wanted to, that would allow them to attract the type of clients that they wanted, rather than just trying to attract as many people as possible. It was almost going after a specific type of client or a specific quality of client for them. People that almost shared their values and stuff and everything else. So effectively their coaching program was almost becoming like a VIP or a boardroom for them, that there were people that they enjoyed speaking to every single day. I realized looking back now over the years of doing that, I was essentially helping them create their personal brand. I'm trying to advocate and promote personal branding as a whole as much as possible for almost anyone out there. And almost anyone could benefit from personal brand. But in particular, we are looking at people who really need to stand or build off trust. Consultants, subject matter experts, mentors, business advisors, everything else. Essentially people that come to someone for their advice based on their journey and their expertise. And I look at it from the standpoint of how do we really trust or be willing to invest in someone's opinion that we know nothing about? Or ultimately, where did they build that experience from or those opinions and advice from? That it's not almost just AI wisdom or stuff that's plucked out of a podcast. They've actually have lived credibility. They've been down that path. They've helped many other people, like the people they want to help now. And they can use that advice and experience then to help those. And we're only really happy to follow the advice or even the accountability that comes along with it for people we know, like, and trust.
Yeah. Thinking about what you do in terms of the photography, did you leave school, train as a photographer, or is it something that was a hobby that evolved into a career? How did that all come about initially?
I was always creative in school. I wanted to go to university to study graphic design. Funny enough, and it's one part of my job role that I don't like is the graphic design bit. But a couple of things got in my way. I lost my A-level art coursework, which meant then I was unable to get in. I had to go for my University of Ulster interview with GCSE work because of it. So I didn't get in there. I went to tech, then to do an out foundation course for a couple of months. But I decided I was going to take a gap year to basically save up for supplies and stuff and everything else. But within a month or two, I got a mobile phone bill, I got a car bill, and life just basically took over. Probably 15 years later, around Christmas time, I bought a camera. I always wanted a big gadget every single Christmas, even when I was an adult. And that one year I decided to get a camera and just started taking pictures and stuff. And it just really evolved from there, just what was a hobby. Someone in the gym one day just asked me, can you take a couple of photos of me? I hear you do a bit of photography. I was like, yeah, no problem. So I went in, took the photos, put them onto Facebook at the time. Instagram hadn't really blown up yet. And then someone messaged me the following week and says how much to charge for a photo shoot. And I was like, someone's going to pay me to take their photo. And it really just ballooned from there. I knew I enjoyed the gym environment. I enjoyed training and everything else that came along with it. So I kind of felt that I wanted to do more fitness. It's funny because at the time I spoke to a photographer I knew and he said there's not a lot of work in fitness. You'll not be able to make a career or anything out of it. And I was like, well, at that point I wasn't thinking about career. I knew it was just something I enjoyed doing and I wanted to do more of. So as I says, it was more just a paid hobby. Any money that I got, I just basically bought new equipment and moved from there and stuff and everything else. But over the years, the demand grew. I knew that almost in a way, if I wanted more of it, I had to create the demand. the fitness industry at that time was very much, it wasn't gen pop like it is now. It was very much bodybuilders, which meant June, July and August, I was busy, bodybuilder shows. But otherwise, the rest of the year, nobody wanted photos. So for me, it was like, right, okay, how do I generate more photos? How do I take almost the idea of preparing for a photo shoot to the mainstream? How do we do it? Along that journey, I realized that if I promoted a photo shoot to an individual, like get in shape, get the photos, show off to your friends, be the envy of friends and family and blah, 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 I realized I'd book one client. But I also realized very quickly that everyone that wanted to book a photo shoot needed a coach to support them. They needed the accountability. They needed the direction, the guidance. So I made a shift in my own marketing and thought, right, I'm going to start marketing to the coach, telling them the benefits of if you encourage your client to do a photo shoot, they get the accountability, they get the motivation, they will help them get the results. And then technically when the photos come in, you'll get to leverage those results that you've helped them achieve through your social media and attract more clients. And I realized then by doing that, I wouldn't just get one client, that if I got a coach on board, they could potentially send me 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 shoots a year off the back of that. So that became from marketing to the one to marketing to the many almost through it. And then that just very quickly led me on to helping coaches with our marketing, with, again, to encourage more shoots. And ultimately, with the blossom of online coaching, it wasn't just personal trainer standing on a gym floor next to someone, almost counting through reps or anything anymore. It was more a case of, right, it's more online, which for me, I looked at in terms of, it's more of a lifestyle. It's not just the 2 or 3 hours you do in a gym a week. It's the choices you make outside the gym, on your lifestyle, where you eat, what you eat, how you sleep, everything that impacts into those overall results. So ultimately then, I started looking at the imagery or the visuals that someone could use, and it's like, there's only so many things you can talk about of someone holding a barbell. So as a coach, how do you talk to the people about the decisions they make outside the gym, which ultimately make a bigger thing? And we've all heard the line that, abs aren't made in the gym, they're made in the kitchen. So it's almost to start getting that point of view in. And I just started pushing then what I would have called at the time was lifestyle photography. Out and about, going for walks, where people are, even using recognizable locations that would automatically grab someone's attention. But starting to think that, particularly as an online coach, who wouldn't necessarily be working with their clients in a one-to-one environment, but online, that almost you wanted that sort of lifestyle that you'd be selling through it. And then that's the route I really started pushing down in terms of it. Still doing the client shoots, but doing a lot more of what I called lifestyle photography. And it is almost now, when I look back, that was the personal branding. That was selling the people, rather than just who you are in the terms of the programs that you type up and send to people or the diets you do out for people. It's almost, right, that guy or girl lives a lifestyle that I would like to mimic or I would like to replicate, rather than just their training style. It's almost the full package. And when we started creating visuals around that element of things, there was a much greater amount of relatability, but connection. And people started building online communities. And through the communities, the strength grew, that it's not just building a coaching program around a single individual. It's about building that community again, albeit the community is almost built around an individual's personal brand. But ultimately, I look at it as when you build it solely as you and what you deliver, and you're the only one within it, everyone expects it to be you every single day. But when you almost build a community, and this goes far beyond the fitness industry, any community out there. And we really seen, even going through COVID, off the back of COVID is where we've seen that influx or the boom of online coaching. Everyone strived for community more. People were going online for the pub quizzes. We had a lot of campaigns, Black Lives Matter and everything else. People just wanted to group together and stand for something together. And I seen then almost an explosion of online communities off the back of that. And those people that built their coaching programs around those communities, along with their personal brand, are the ones that really excelled. So I suppose that's a very long answer to your question in the terms of where I sort of started off with photography as a hobby, and then see almost right up till today as I look at myself now.
I suppose then, when you think of that space, it was about personal brand, but also about aesthetics, wasn't it? A lot in that industry. How does that now start to evolve into just the cafe owner, the taxi driver, you know, the coach, the mentors, these people, the educators of the world. How do you take that element of combining, I suppose, that personal brand authenticity with the aesthetic side of it?
Moving from the aesthetics and the visuals, it's very much about, I mean, even back, if we look at the start, it was everyone, even in the online coaching space within fitness, it's went through its cycles. You know, about a year ago, there was a big boost in menopausal women. A lot of coaches were jumping on that, helping busy professionals, people jumping on that. And it's almost people following through trends. But it's ultimately, for me, I looked at it in the standpoint of, if you're getting up every single day and you're going to have to speak to people, and technically, whether it be coaching or any business, we speak to the people we work with more than we do our loved ones. So if we're attracting people, if we're having to work with people we don't actually like, and almost to take my back in my journey, when I worked in a government department, my phone decided who I had to work with. If that phone rang, I had to answer it. No matter who was on the other end of it, I had to deal with them as a customer. But whereas when you work for yourself, you don't want to have to just work with anyone. You want to basically be in control of the influence, who gets in your door and who doesn't. So again, rather than just trying to work with absolutely everyone, or just trying to attract anyone and everyone to your business, I really push down that idea of, I want to attract a certain type of person. And again, that's when that sort of visual comes in, that how do you make a connection? So it's all, I look almost at any industry, particularly whether it be marketing or anything else, or how you market around what you deliver. The most competitive segment of every single industry is the average. It's where everyone's doing the same. Everyone's charging the same, offering the same service and stuff and everything else. And it's the most competitive because that's where the most people are. And that's where choice becomes the hardest for someone. They're almost looking at too many. It's like when you go into a restaurant and there's like 50 options on there. You just don't know what to pick because there's so many. And everything looks the same or sounds the same. So for me then, it's about, okay, how do you position yourself differently? And it's about being yourself. And it's about being yourself and allowing the things that set you apart or make you different to be the similarity for someone else out there. I mean, I can look at the beauty industry, for example, and say that there's potentially 10 or 15 makeup artists within a 10-mile radius. Now, there may be slight differences in the terms of delivery and how they do their service, but ultimately, if they're all offering approximately the same quality of service for the same price point, how does someone choose one over the other? And it could be simply down to, they have a dog like I do. They go to a similar coffee shop that I do, or a friend of a friend and things like that, or they seem to listen to the same sort of music. They were at a concert that I was also at. Those wee small things just build up more of a connection and relationship with someone to allow you to choose them over someone you know absolutely nothing about.
Thinking about that, and I'm just thinking of those averages then that you're talking about. When you're looking through maybe Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, or I suppose even at events, you know, and you see people putting over the content that is a part of their brand that they're creating. What are the biggest mistakes you're seeing, do you think, personally? You know, what do you think people are getting wrong when it comes to this?
I'd say there's probably two big mistakes, and they're almost interlinked. One is probably inconsistency. I liken it sometimes to being on the motorway in heavy traffic. The lane the next to you starts moving quicker. First, the indicator's on, you jump into it, so you jump in. And next thing you know, the lane you were in starts moving quicker than the one you've just got in. Or the one on the other side of you starts moving, and people jump from jump to dump to dump to dump, thinking that they're going to... And ultimately, everyone gets to the same place almost at the exact same time, or if even at all. Or someone that sat in the one lane and didn't jump ends up quicker down the road. And people do that with their content. They just look what's going on around them. They look what everyone else is doing and think, oh, they're doing that, I better do that. Or here's a new trend of someone pretend to throw a box at someone and stuff and everything else, and it's almost jumping on. But ultimately then, when someone goes to pick you, if, for example, that they're going to select you based on not just one piece of content. And one thing that I found over the years has been that your best clients are ones that have taken the time to make a decision to work with you. Someone that makes a split decision to jump on board with something could just as quick make that same split decision to disappear or ghost you. So ultimately, I look at it in terms of the best clients that you get do their due diligence. They look at stuff, they do their research, or potentially they may have followed you for 6 months or a year. So when you have continuity through your messaging, when you have continuity in your branding and your socials that you put out, there's a familiar message that goes on. It allows them to build up that. But whereas when people jump from trend to trend to trend, or everything's just almost chaotic on their socials, they don't get the opportunity to build up that connection and that relatability. But as well as that, even if for terms, if it's someone that you are going to invest in the terms of planning, and I've joked with online coaches before in the terms of this, it's like when your content looks like it's just thrown together on a day from here to there and everywhere else, it's like there's no plan. Would they look at you in the terms of building out a 6 month or a 12 month plan for them and go, oh, I'll figure your workout out tomorrow? Or your dad, for what you're going to eat tomorrow, I'll figure it out tomorrow and just send it over to you. No, they're coming for structure. But when your content doesn't look like it has any structure at all, there's a breakdown there.
Do you think from a business perspective or any sort of content creation perspective, one of the issues there is that people are maybe chasing going viral, thinking, I do one clip, I go viral, and all of a sudden I make money. You know what I mean? And anybody that really works in the real business world knows, doesn't matter if you have 100,000 likes on a clip, it has no value to your business unless you convert that into business. Do you think that people have lost the concept of depth and value, maybe in exchange for that virality, going and thinking, if I get one viral clip or a couple of viral clips, I've made it. And that's maybe not the truth.
So with social media now almost being around the attention market, it's gamified. They're setting social media up to almost set rewards in terms of views and stuff and everything else like that because they want to hold you on. But as well as that, almost it's like trying to beat your own high score. You're constantly getting into better and better and better. And the only way you can do that is by playing their game. But when I look at it, even from the aspect of when I first started photography, I would have used a platform called Flickr. And there was discovery in there. You'd have got your likes and stuff. And I look back and realized that I was sucked in and played that game. But when you had said there about people forgetting it, I think you have to go through that process at some point or other until you learn that getting a certain amount of views does not put money in your bank. Particularly if you're posting to attract clients to a program or anything it is that you're doing, that you know that, okay, views are good. They're one metric in the terms to see what your content's doing. But ultimately, if those views are not leading to someone messaging in your inbox to say, can I work with you? That ultimately they're pointless. And again, a lot of times people look at views, they're not quantifying where they're coming from. So, I mean, for example, if I put out a reel about coming to the studio here for a photo shoot and I have a woman in Sydney, Australia looking at it who's never going to step foot in Northern Ireland, that view to me is there's not a direct link or benefit to me. She may have a long distance cousin that lives in Northern Ireland, makes a recommendation, but the likelihood for that to happen is very limited. So for me, even I would always rather take a message, an inquiry in my inbox over views. And it almost gets back to this idea, your 500 ideal clients and moving from there. So I think that because of the way social media has been built and the way the programs are set up in the terms of trying to keep your attention as long as possible, a lot of people are getting distracted by that and chasing what they refer to as the vanity metrics of views and followers and stuff and everything else. But I sometimes look at the harsh reality. While you're doing what so many other people are doing, and no matter the size of your following, if it's not really engaged people, and in terms of if you just stopped posting content today, how many of your following would notice that you had? How many of your following would automatically move on to someone else? Or would the feed automatically put someone else out there who sounds like you, looks like you, and does the exact same thing, and you would instantly be forgotten and replaced? But whereas if you build a truly authentic, relatable personal brand or social media feed, that if you almost, and I'll say this to you, if you didn't show up at your bowling club for 2-3 weeks, someone would send flowers to your door. because they'd wonder where you are and you're gone missing. Because another Welsh guy is not just going to walk into your bowling club and take your place automatically overnight, because they know you. They know the difference of who you are. And it's almost that idea. So it's like, I think some people get down, and it is the vanity of it, and it's almost, it's the quick response in the terms of, right, if I get loads of views, that must have been good. Okay, I'll go again. But ultimately, it's looking beyond that sort of instant reaction or feedback to what the longer plan is. Don't get me wrong, if you want to be an influencer and you want to grow the followings and stuff and everything else from that side of things, then 100%, yeah. But I'm trying to sort of talk to people who are like, I'm looking to attract a specific client. I'm looking to attract someone into my business. I'm looking to attract inquiries rather than just views and stuff and everything else. That's when you need to dial down. And even to use an example, I spoke to a potential client recently, and I knew that he's a massive Oasis fan. He's been to the 3 of the concerts of the recent tour because he loves them. And I asked him, so what was it like in the big arena, all the lights, 80,000 people? He says it was amazing. Yeah, it couldn't have been better. And I said to him, but what if you'd have got to see them in the limelight in Belfast with just 50 other people? And he's like, what? He says, imagine you were in there with Liam and Noel, and you could almost make eye contact. It felt like he was singing Wonderwall to you. And he was like, oh, mate. But to me, it's like, that's the content you create. Don't create content for the masses to try and get as many views or likes as possible. Because I do believe when you try and speak to everyone, you connect with no one. When you create content that's almost polarized, dialed down, that someone feels like you're speaking specifically to them. I feel like they're speaking to me. That's when you're going to get someone to come into your inbox and say, can I please work with you?
Yeah, I think what I'm doing here with podcasting, I think my ambition is to have an impact with 100 people rather than just people listening to the odd one, and you have these mass numbers of, you've 10,000, 20, 100,000 listeners, but when you actually look into your data, they're just people skimming over the podcast. Whereas I'm looking at my data and I'm getting the same people coming back, listening, and I'm starting to realize I'm starting to have an impact with 10, 20, 30 people at the moment, and just grow that to, I only need to have an impact with 100 people.
I think it really comes down to your product as well.
Yeah.
I can remember 7, 8 years ago, Kai Green, who was an influential bodybuilder, one of the top ones in the world, arguably should have won the Mr. Olympia at the time with Phil Heath and stuff, but there's a whole thing behind that. But he was selling workout programs for $5. But he had 5 million followers, so he was just ticking them off at that point. But you can bet that no one ever got results from that $5 program, because they probably looked at it, took a couple of cues from it, went in, they didn't try it at that time, and then bounced to something else the following week. So if you're selling just a low ticket, low price point commodity to people, then yeah, go mass if you want. But one thing I will say is be prepared to burn through an audience, even if it's the world, or even with your product and what you're going to sell will have a half-life in the terms of what's going to die. But if you want to sell something high ticket with accountability that ultimately is going to be leveraged off results and everything else, you want to be very specific in the terms of it. You want to create exclusivity. Everyone knows what a VIP room is. And everyone says that I want to be in the VIP room. But you can't, justify getting into a VIP room or even building a VIP room when everyone can get into it, or it seems like anyone can have it. People want what not everyone can have. And that's what you make exclusivity. And again, create your content around that, rather than just creating content that for me is almost like vanilla ice cream. It's just there for everyone, but no one gets excited about it.
Yeah. Do you think one of the challenges then, because we talk about authenticity, and I can go on to, if I had my phone with me at this very moment and jumped onto Instagram, and you start flicking through or jump onto any social media platform, that you start to see this element of everybody's an expert, everybody's selling you a program or a course, and everybody seems to have made £1 million just last week. And let me tell you how I made my million, how I made my 10 million. How much of that's authentic? How do we sieve through the authentic and the non-authentic elements of that?
A line I use in almost every single personal brand conversation is no one asks a lottery winner on how to make money, because technically they didn't learn anything along the way. They almost got lucky. Or you could say it's the whole idea of, a calm sea never did make a good sailor. And there's a lot of people out there, and I mean, and for a while, a sort of fake it till you make it type thing. And I think that's been skewed in the terms of just keep trying, as opposed to just lie.
Yeah.
And sell bullshit. And I know that through regular podcasts, that underlying theme of, imposters don't get imposter syndrome. Yeah. And there's a lot of imposters out there. There's a lot of self-proclaimed gurus or experts. To me, I'm like, prove it. Where have you got your expertise from? Let me know how you learned it, where it came from. Let me know. And I know you're very much a fact-based guy. You love to see information or data that's been collated from the real world, the real results. And I agree with that in the terms of it. So there's a lot of it out there. And again, this almost comes then in the terms of why you need to expose your journey. And maybe expose is the wrong word. Sure the elements in your journey. Sure that you have faced challenge and overcome them. Sure that has taught you resilience. It has taught you lessons that then you can pass on to other people. Because almost if everything that you has ever tried was easy and just worked out for you, you're not going to be relatable. Because the people who are going to want to come and ask you for your help are going to be struggling at the time. And if you've never struggled, they're not going to. If anything, I think sometimes people believe through social media that they have to paint a picture of perfection. But perfection is not relatable to most people, particularly if it's someone who's stuck and needs help. So almost they look at you as a gulf. I can't get to where you are, and I can't be that. Or if anything, they look at you and think, well, it's all right for him. He has everything. It all went his way. It was easy for him. Or, the old analogy of like born with a silver spoon in their mouth. So technically, if you haven't earned where you are, how can anyone relate to you and then come to you and say, right, I want you to help me as well?
Yeah, and then, because I look at this from a couple of points of view, because there's interesting elements to this, and I'm, the forever looking at behaviour and trying to understand and adding the evidence behind that of why people may have made a particular choice or creating a product or whatever that may be, that I'm looking at my own behaviours in consuming content as well, and analysing what I am doing based on what's being presented in front of me. And it's very interesting because I sort of think of this, the uptake of AI as well. So it's a huge leverager for us all, artificial intelligence. And I think when you combine that to what we're just talking about, that falseness, really, it's not authentic. It's just people spouting anything to generate an income and I suppose get people to spend their hard-earned money. But when we flip that, then that we're all starting to use AI, we're in danger of becoming authentically false, if you know what I mean by that. And that, I'm using AI to create posts and stuff now, but it gets me to the start line. I'm not scooping, posting, sending it out. Yep. I'm looking at it, understanding what it's created. But are we getting to this danger where AI becomes so good that we all become authentically false?
I always believe just because someone abuses something doesn't mean it's wrong. Alcohol, food, anything, sugar, anything else I say there. It's almost human nature where people will take it to the point and almost misuse or take something to the point then they're using it for wrong. And AI for me is probably just one of those things as well, that they're using it to hide behind. Someone told me a story a couple of years back that they had met an influencer who had got to the point where they didn't want to go out in public because their content had been so filtered that they were afraid that people would see how they really looked, which is a frightening place to get to. But for me, I use AI. AI that's integrated into the likes of Photoshop. Like one particular example is highlighting a subject. I would have had to spend maybe 5 minutes and click 30 times or 100, 200 times around a subject. Now I click a button and it just selects a subject. That's AI. That's making my editing process a lot quicker, so I can like almost brighten the background up or brighten the subject and do stuff like that. I use AI, again, like you, in the terms of creating content and things, but again, it's almost down to the terms of how much input you put into it first. So you've overseen many studies. If you use one case study, you'd have got the results from one case study. But whereas if you'd have pumped 100 case studies into there and then looked at them, but your hardest part of that job would have been reading through and analysing all those different case studies and pulling out those points, which potentially would have become boring and stuff and everything else, and you might have missed things. Whereas AI now, for what it does, AI for me's greatest attribute is the fact that it can analyse loads of stuff quickly and give you the results you want. And that's where it can expedite things. Visually wise, I definitely see there is a place for AI visual content, but I also see that there's a place that it won't replace. And an easy example for me is I wouldn't go to a restaurant that only had AI generated imagery on their social media, and that's where I was going to pick. Now we all know over the years that you never get a Big Mac that looks like the one on the screen above when you walk in the McDonald's. We know that. But almost in the terms of it, if it's all just AI generated, I don't know what I'm getting when I go in there. And in the terms of it, if you're trying to pick someone for accountability and trust, or someone you're going to look up to, someone you're going to ask for their advice and stuff and everything else, I think that they need to see who that person is. They want to hear their real voice. They want to see who they are and stuff and everything else. There is a limited amount of trust that can be gauged through it. And people would ask me on social media, a lot of people would hide behind a logo rather than show their face. And again, if you consider the next time you have a conversation, trust is built through eye contact. If you're having a conversation with someone, they're looking all around you, there's no eye contact, and you're wondering where they are and not even listening to me. And almost even through a photo, that is one thing. So it's even the concept of what they call a cat's light in a photo, which is the brightest bit of an eye, which could be a window or a light, like in this case and stuff, and that's where the connection's made. So sometimes in visuals, there is that requirement through there. So to step away from a logo and start putting your face more in things. But again, that if it's a face that's constructed solely out of AI, am I going to trust this? So in the terms of it, like we could look at, technically anyone can go on to ChatGPT right now and get a workout program or get a diet program or even ask advice on anything else like that. But one thing that AI will never replace is personal accountability and implementation. And I reflect back to when step counters come out, and they were like, this is going to revolutionize things. And I remember thinking, it's going to let people count steps when they do them, but it's not necessarily going to make them get up off a sofa, unless it started giving you a real electric shock every now and again when you didn't move. But ultimately, that never transformed the world. It was still being accountable to someone, a friend, a family member, a target like going away on holiday, a wedding, or a photo shoot, or an online coach or anyone else like that. And again, for the people that we work with, consultants, business advisors, things like that, people need that accountability. They want to know that if I don't do what you ask me to do, are you going to be let down? And am I going to have to basically answer to you for that? And am I then going to be? And that's the reason it keeps me going. Yeah. AI, even if it did come back and tell you off for not doing something, you're just going to go and move on.
Do you think when we think about it and how it's, people were fearful of it encroaching, especially in your space, the creative space of it, literally doing away with Martin Irvine Productions, we'll just generate it automatically. And I'm not a huge believer in any of that either. I think when you go back into historical big industrial changes over think of cars becoming robotic, and we have robots now build cars instead of people, but the reality is it was just a shift of labour, that what actually happened was an upskill, that people that build cars now need to learn how to build robots, if you know what I mean, that build the cars. And we're in that space that AI is doing some of the mundane jobs for us, creating a bit of automation, speeding up so we can spend more time in those creative spaces and especially doing what you love doing. I work in the education sector, and I say to people when I have these conversations is it gives you time to spend more time educating
Yep.
It can look after a lot of your administration. Where the danger lies is, especially in education, because I've been asked questions around, anybody being able to do a master's degree now, just use AI. Because we know that the tools that we use to analyse these give off a lot of false positives. There was only a story last week in the news with a young girl that literally was accused of cheating, and she's now been able to prove she didn't. But you go in like, that's somebody's life you've just played with over an algorithm. An algorithm's been used to analyse another algorithm and suggesting that there's conflict here, and you've nearly destroyed somebody's life based on that information. So a false positive is a very dangerous place to be. Whereas my argument is, going back to that authenticity, I suppose, in what we're talking about, that if somebody can create content and post it, I can sort of look down a LinkedIn post or look down anything that somebody's putting out, and within reason sort of say, that person can back up that post. That when you're talking about creativity, but when somebody's talking about leadership and management, when somebody's talking around certain areas, when you've done your research, you've looked into the person, you understand that that person can actually back up what's in that post. So if I asked them a question about it, they could back that up. And that's where that authenticity. So rather than be false about it, we can all be authentically false. We can all become an expert in aerospace. We could all be an Emily Bond. Start posting stuff about rocket science because all AI. But we can't verify, we can't curate the authenticity of that information. And that's where the real danger is for some people if they don't have the curation skills of going in and saying, I can work out whether this person is authentic or not from the information they're posting, looking at who they are, and being able or investing money into that organisation or that person. Whereas if you can have those curation skills, and that's, I think, one of the things I always say is be curious, be very, very curious, but also have the ability to look at multiple sources of information and make a decision based on the evidence that's in front of you. I have friends that have invested money, and I'm going, you are a smart person. How have you done this? How have you invested that money with that person? Did you even see, you would know Shelley Cowan, obviously spoken. Did you read Shelley Cowan's story a few weeks back on LinkedIn? And she spoke, and I think this has come through social media content and people, that she was literally sold a program and she spent a huge amount of money on a program that literally delivered nothing. Speaking program that promised her speaking engagements all around the world and all this, and literally she found out that the £1 million claim had actually amounted to about £20,000.
It's not a modern thing.
No,
we talk about in the Wild West the snake oil. Guys going from town to town to town selling these magic remedies that cure everything else, and it's there and it always will be there. I think you're 100% right in the terms of we need to be curious, but we need to curate what we see more. Social media as a whole, you see a lot of people online getting annoyed or triggered because they've seen something that someone said and they don't agree with it, and they feel compelled to challenge it. I think people need to curate their social media more. Stop exposing yourself to stuff that you don't want to see or you don't need to see. You can hit the unfollow button as quick as you can hit the follow button. And with that, then I imagine, like, if I sit down to a TV show on Netflix and I watch an episode and it's like, I don't like this, it's not making me feel right. And even with that, there's been a couple of like serial killer shows recently, and they just made me uncomfortable. I was like, I don't need to watch this. So for me, I turn it off. So for stuff online that's constantly making you feel bad about yourself or feel triggered or winding you up, I think you just need to curate it better and start channeling down what you expose yourself to. But I think we always have a personal responsibility, not just social media, to curate what we expose ourselves to. We know that the people we surround ourselves with determines who we are. That even if we continually, they say if you hang out with nothing but alcoholics, you'll end up being an alcoholic. And that's just one example of that. So I think even in terms of what we see and do in every single day, what you allow yourself to be exposed to or hear or even say to yourself each and every day will ultimately affect the decisions that you make. So in the terms of if you're looking at whether it's social media content or anything else like that, which you're like, I don't agree with what they're selling there or what they're doing there, that's fake and stuff and everything else. Slowly but surely, if you allow yourself to be continually exposed to that, it's eventually going to wear you down. That curiosity will be worn down and almost become a convincer at one point. So I think sometimes we just need to be able to switch certain types of content off.
I was at a course earlier in the year, and it was me, Sean, and JP, and one of the people that was at the course told us a story, and it was very funny. And he talked to us about his son, and he was telling us how his son is training to be an engineer, but was TikTok stupid. And we all sort of looked at each other. What does he mean by this? He says, like, I goes in one night and he's sitting there with 2 garlic cloves shoved up his nostrils. And I asked him what he was doing. He says, I have a cold and I saw this on TikTok. This clear was my cold. He says, and I'm going on a date tonight. And he says, and I just thought, you do realise now you're just going to stink of garlic all night when you go out with your date. And he was going like, is this the generation that we have, that we do, this thing that all our youngsters are stupid, and it's far from it. We still have smart young people. The problem is that social media can make you a bit stupid. You know what I mean? And like if you follow, like you say, if you live in that space and you keep following silly stuff, I had this, or have this saying, is that if you repeat falsehoods over and over and over, at some stage they become the truth.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And or the truth for some people anyway. And these are one of the challenges that we're faced with, especially with social, because gone are the days where to spread a falsehood, it was started in the pub and it only got around a handful of people. Look at how social media can influence political campaigns and all these sorts of things in the world at the moment. You can just put any sort of post out now, and it can become the truth very, very quickly, or become believable. And I think this is, like you say, it's a skill that we need to be teaching in school now. I think is curation. I've spoke about this, is this the new next big job for big companies? Do you become an AI curator? Is it a job? I think there is a job there, or some form of curation where we start to look at this content and we can, if I'm doing a bit of research and I'm using AI, how do I create that's accurate?
Yep.
Too many people just post it. I can spot them a mile away on social media.
Yep.
Read them very quickly, but it doesn't make a lot of it uninteresting either. Because if you have the skills, so I know when you are obviously prompting, trying to get your outputs from social media, you're applying your knowledge and your skills into that, and you're extracting some. It's just helping you formulate and format what you would have got to in some shape or form that would have taken a long time to do. And it's the same as what you spoke around. You worked in the fitness industry. And if I think of, like you say, you can go in and get a 12-week training program. The difference between what we're getting there and what we would get from a PT is it doesn't remove the need to train those PTs in the skills that we've always been training them in, because who tells us whether that's a good or a bad program? Who can work? Who has the curation skills to look at what AI is putting out there and say, I wouldn't use that. That's not suitable for you. Yep. You have a bad hip. You have a heart condition. That's not a great program for you. You know what I mean? So the ability to have those skills to personalize. So it's never going to absolve us of needing the expertise.
Yep.
It might make everybody a potential expert, but when you curate it, you'll actually find them. I have this saying that I heard from a coach years ago. Everybody wants to be a guru. All a guru is somebody that can't explain their own bullshit with science. I don't want to be a guru. And I think I said this.
Yeah, I think it's similar to, the old idea of you want better answers, ask better questions. Yeah. And technically, even when you use AI for a lot of it, you're asking another question. And I think maybe a mistake that a lot of people have, or a perception a lot of people have for those that do use AI, they're just throwing give me a post idea about this, and leaving it at that. But I mean, you have the option to go in, and sometimes, like, to give the context and what I use an AI model that I've built, that I've put like 20 podcast recordings like this into, and I've asked it to analyze my points, the main subjects that I've discussed, my message and stuff and everything else, and build it out. So when I ask it to create a piece of content, I want it to reference everything I've ever said before to it. So technically it's coming from me. But even with just using the general AI, you can go in and just say, right, based on reputable sources within the last 3 months, give me information based on this. And even just to ask it that one layer more of stuff that's come from 3 months, that because it could source, you don't know where, if you don't specify that, it'll source information from maybe 10 years ago on the web, a website or a company that's no longer there, no longer trusted, and has been disproved many times over. But that website won't know that.
Yeah.
So unless you specifically put in a parameter to say, based on references with a certain time or a particular level of accreditation or anything else like that in there, you can be a wee bit more specific on it in terms of it. And again, it comes back to what I was saying there. Asking better questions gets better answers. And that's something that's been around for many, many years before it. And I think that's the case as well in the terms of it. So AI as a whole, for me, then it's expediting things in the world. And that's one thing it's done. I sometimes look at that. There's people that will insist on counting with their fingers when they've got a calculator with them.
Do you know what I think? To nick a phrase out of your industry, I see AI as my B-roll. You know what I mean? You're the A-roll. You're the main focus of this. And if you use it as your B-roll, one of the sayings I have when I'm talking to people, I share some of the workflows that I've used over the years. And one of the things I would say, outsource your doing, don't outsource your thinking.
I was actually creating a couple of pieces of content on AI, and someone, a client, was standing there, and they couldn't believe that I put a 60-second prompt in, that essentially I was like, okay, I want to draft a post I want it to be this amount of maximum credit or characters, I want it to be this and that and everything else, and I want the post to be about, and then I went in to retell a story or ideas or philosophies or anything that I have around. All I was asking chat to do was take what I said and put it and do the grammar for me. I'm not great at grammar, and that's it. Whereas if I was to write that post out, I'd have read lines within that maybe 10 times thinking, does that make sense? Is that word there? Is that comma supposed to be there? And stuff like that. And that would have just taken me so much longer, and I probably still would have got it wrong. So for me, I'm using chat almost. What it really offers to me is basically like an English teacher marking my work for me and giving it back how it should have been written.
See, I've had this conversation, especially in education, because I'm a believer that as an educator, we default to what I call dynamic assessment. That in the world of AI, stop trusting AI to check AI's homework. We're educators. We understand when people are supposed to have a depth of knowledge, how to work out whether that exists or not. So if you're presenting me, if I send you away to do an assignment and you present me an assignment, and people are going, oh, you have to check whether AI has written that for them. No, I don't. I have to check whether the AI is it an AI presented assignment, or is it just an AI structured document? Two very different things. Because an AI presented document is one that you've put in my assignment brief and asked AI to create you a document, you hand it in, you haven't a clue what's in it. You just literally hand me it, very superficial. So if I start to interview you on that document or that assignment I've handed you, you won't be able to answer any questions about it. You won't be able to tell me where the research come from. Now, the alternative to that is that somebody has done all the research, but is not very good at grammar. Can they? We've leveled the playing field because now they can structure that document as good into an academic, technical written document without. So they have the knowledge, they have the skills. So if I sit in front of you and ask you to defend that work, my job as an educator is to get you to learn. So what am I marking? The piece of paper or your skills?
Yep.
and I should be marking your skills. And that's what one of my arguments is, that if we look at this from the right perspective, so when we flip that into content creation, if a content creator, you're using it to get you refined content, better layout, better structure, there's nothing wrong with that as long as you have the basis, the depth to go behind it.
Even from a visual aspect now, there are AI editing programs. So rather than just create a complete sort of AI image from scratch, there's AI editing programs that I know that a lot of wedding photographers and stuff that are using, who have to edit multiple images all at once. But these AI editing programs need to be taught first.
Yeah.
And I've trialed one. And essentially, I had to upload 3,000 of my edited images, and then it built a profile around how I edited images. Now, when I get a big shoot back, and perhaps like some of the shoots are maybe over 300 images, I can basically put those images into that AI profile. It's built around me based off of 3,000 different images. And then it'll do like the global adjustments for me, which would almost be that first part.
Statly.
And it's just a starter, but then I'll move on and do the fine retouching and stuff. But when it does it, it still leaves, like, through my editing software, all the little adjustments to make, move and stuff and everything else and all. Which some people may go, oh, but that's cheating, that's not what I'm paying you for. Technically, you're paying for the images. But if I can use that program to get you images back 5 times quicker, that you can put then into action through your socials and allow you to get the result you need from that, like attracting clients, then where's the boss? But also from that, people can't ignore the fact of, if those photos were taken here in the studio, I had to do the lighting, I had to set the settings on my camera, I had to press the button, I had to tell you where to stand, direct you, posing and stuff and everything else. There was still a lot of work went in to the original creation that helped me get to where I wanted to be. Whereas I'm just expediting one of the monotonous points and stuff that can be repeated over and over again to expedite the client getting the result that they came to me for.
It's very interesting you say that, because I had a conversation with somebody in your industry, was working in London, and he outsourced some of his work. He had particular projects and he would have outsourced it. And he says he had a standard fee for this type of work, and he had 3 or 4 people going and creating these short video clips for him. He says, and as AI built out, I knew they were using AI to do something that used to take 4 hours, and they're now doing it, and the process can now be done in 30 minutes to an hour. He says, but I never once thought of going and asking those people for a discount. I didn't turn around and say, now you're only getting this or that. He says, because what I was buying was the quality and the value. As long as that didn't drop, I didn't. They were using. He says, because I'm using one of the tools that they're using. Yes, and I could start to bring that back in house. But what it allowed me to do is keep pushing that content out there, build my business elsewhere. He says, so we have to get past. And I think, we have a mutual friend in Phil Graham who talks around stop selling time and sell value. What do you know what I mean? People that are working on an hourly rate will always struggle. You know what I mean? Because the reality is that I don't tend to try and work out what the hourly rate is if somebody says, oh, that's £2,000. But if you turn around and say, I'm £150 an hour, people go, well, I'm not paying you £150 an hour. But if I said, oh, that job's £2,000, I don't try and work out how long it's going to take them.
So that reminds me of one of 2 stories. And one's about, and I delivered this through a personal brand webinar recently, and I was like, don't be just the hammer. And it's the old story about the shipbuilders that couldn't get an engine to work, and they paid for a guy to come in, and he basically looked around, he looked at the whole engine and stuff and everything else, and he reached in his bag, he took a hammer out, and he hit the engine once, and it burst into life. And then he sent them a £1,000 invoice. And it says, but you only hit it with a hammer? And he says, yeah, if £5 was the hammer, and then the 995 was no more to hit the hammer. And it's the experience. But again, that for me is what personal branding is. It's not the hourly rate, it's everything that's come up. Or the other story that I would often use is that Picasso was spotted in a cafe drawing on a napkin. And when he went up and leave, the girl ran over and says, can I have that napkin? And he says, yeah, it'll cost you €10,000. And the girl went, but it only took you 5 minutes. And he says, no, it took me 70 years. She only wanted the napkin because of who he was, and who he was based off of his life and his journey. And again, that's where personal brand comes in. So even with that, whether it's we use AI to expedite certain things, but still people are going to come to you for your skills. Those skills and those experiences are based off your journey, and people will criticize or not see the value in what you do if all they get to see is that 1 hour, that hourly rate. Whereas when you expose all your learnings, your journey and stuff and everything else, people get to see the journey and realize, well, I don't want to have to go through all that. I'm just going to pay them for their expertise, and they're going to come in and get me the result that I need quicker, and I can focus on other things.
How much of you do you give up? Mm-hmm. How much of you do you give up when we talk about authenticity? You know, when I hear the word authenticity, personally for me, it's I have two things I'm looking for: trust and truth. That's all I'm looking for. You know what I mean? If I'm looking authenticity from somebody, I want that sort of trust. I want to be able to trust you, and I want you to be telling me something that is. And I don't mean like just pure truth. I'm talking about if you're selling me concepts, selling me ideas, I want to know that you've researched that evidence, that it works, that it's truth. You know what I mean?
I think it's like I use a line: I've taken more shit photos than I've taken good photos. Yeah. But it's the shit photos that allowed me to get to the point where I could take the better photos. Or the Michael Jordan of he's missed more 3 throws than he's made. And I think that's it. It's the journey. Expose the elements of what you are in your journey that make you relevant, that allow you to set yourself as an expert, that allow you to display and document your learning and why people will pay for what the struggles that you've went through so they don't have to go through those same struggles. I think being able to embrace your struggles or your weaknesses at a time is strength. Because honestly, if you want someone to reach out to ask for your help, they have to expose their vulnerability. And if you refuse to show vulnerability at any point, you almost have to open that exchange first with vulnerability. People are going to fear judgment. And if you perceive yourself always as perfect, they're going to assume that you're going to judge them and laugh at them. Whereas if you can show an element of weakness, vulnerability, but how you've overcame that to turn it into a strength, they're going to want the same strength and follow that same journey, and that's why they're going to reach out to you. In the terms of how much you expose or share of your life, it's entirely up to you. What's relevant? What's relevant to you, or what's going to be relevant to the perceptive people? One big question I get asked a lot is, should I show my kids, my children, in my personal brand? Personally, being a father is my highest value. It's why I do what I do. Everything is about being able to pass on lessons to my daughter, provide her with financial security, opportunities, choice, adventure, everything else like that. So being a father is important to me. I don't necessarily put my daughter in my content. I put me being a father. And almost, I can't have one without the other. But I don't necessarily stick a camera in my daughter's face or anything else like that. I do take her photo, obviously, but in the terms of what makes it onto my socials, some elements. But I'd like to keep certain things private as well. But for me, from time to time, showing me being a father or being part of a family and stuff is important to me, but it also makes me relatable. And one thing that I'm really proud of, that a number of times that someone has came in and worked with me and said, you're just like you are in your content. And to me then that's a massive compliment, because it means then my compliment is authentic. I hear the term try to be authentic, and I was like, can you try to be authentic? There is no try, there's either do or don't. Just be you. And I'd imagine, and I would say at times through my personal journey on social media and stuff, I've tried to portray myself as something I probably wasn't, or I wasn't yet, or I wanted to be or thought I wanted to be at the time. And I think if I still had to do that day in, day out today, I would be very tired. That I almost constructed a persona on social media that I had to turn on every time I turned the camera on. But worse yet, that every time I was out in public or had the potential for someone to recognize me or see me, that I had to then fall back into this persona. That we would lose sight of who we are. We know, like in movies, there's famous method actors that almost get to the point. And even the recent Monster series on Netflix, and it talked about how the actor back in the day who played the main role in Psycho started to feel like he was taking on attributes of the character. And we know that about method acting and stuff and everything else out there, that you almost start to take on the psychological traits of someone you have to pretend to be every single day. People are doing that on social media now.
Yeah.
They're creating a fake persona about themselves, and they lose sight of who they are. And ultimately, when they do, they lose confidence in who they really are, the person, because they believe they have to be this other person every single day.
Yeah.
So for me, from a personal side, I just imagine that would be really tireless. And it's something I don't want to teach my daughter. I don't want to teach her that you have to be who people want you to be, or who you think people want you to be. You have to be this person to fit in with everyone else and all. I would much rather teach her, be you. And even if that's not, if people don't like you for you, then that's okay.
Yeah.
I think we have to understand that, particularly even building a personal brand, you have to understand that to be accepted and valued by the people you want to work with, you have to let go of the people who won't. And just forget about what they think about you.
Yeah, I think it was Grant Cardone, wasn't it, once said that he'd realised that 50% of the people following him on social media didn't actually like him. He didn't care.
Yeah, and lots of you will have people who will follow you to see you slip up, to see you fail.
Yeah,
and it's fine. Let them, because technically, and even for me now, there's a critique culture on social media, even particularly in the coaching space. And I don't know when it became one of a coach's main role to criticise and point fingers or belittle other coaches. I thought your role as a coach was to lift people up and better your clients, not go around pointing fingers at other people. You may turn around and go, yes, but I'm doing it for the better good and everything else. But honestly, it's a status. You're challenging status. And one thing I heard recently is challenging someone's status is a status play itself, because you feel threatened by what they're doing. So you're trying to protect your own. So you're almost being sucked into their own game. So for me, it's like there's a critique now that, I even seen someone reviewing a review video over a review.
Oh, yeah.
Where does it stop? When does it the inception almost come? So in the terms of it, it's like, at least get to the point, you don't need to worry what everyone else is doing. And one thing like I really want to teach my daughter is run your own race. Doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. If they're all looking around them or they're looking at you or anything else like that, leave it to it. Because while someone has one eye on you, they don't have two eyes on what they need to be doing. And while you keep two eyes on what you need to be doing, no one is going to be able to catch you on what you need to do.
Yeah, I think it's... When I worked on a project with young people with additional needs, and one of the things I always used to say to them was, don't be defined what other people think of you. And I think it's... If you can get your mindset to that, who cares?
I remember a phrase once, a girl referred to their Down syndrome child as just a limited edition.
Yeah.
And I always liked that.
Yeah, 100%. I used to spell, or I still try to as much as I spell disability with a capital A. So you read it as ability.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing is looking at people for what they can do, not what they can't do. And I think that's what criticism is, isn't it? You're looking at what can I pull apart you, what can I say is wrong.
I think when you have to resort to the point of putting other people down or picking holes in other people, it's because you've run out of good things to say about yourself or good things to say about your clients or who you're working with or your own results. Yeah. Because sometimes, the saying goes, any fool can criticize and almost every fool will.
Yeah.
That when you get to that point that and it's a default, because it's like, right, I don't feel like I have results worthy to share at the minute, so it's easier then just to flick and put other people down. Yeah. And we've always there's so many lines, blowing out someone else's candle so yours burns a wee bit brighter and stuff and everything else. But this is one thing that I've learned massively over the years. Your content is a magnet. What you post, you attract. If you continuously put out negative content that's putting people down or based around excuses or picking holes in people, you as a byproduct are going to pick or attract people that do the same thing. In a coaching space, you're going to attract clients that are probably going to pick holes or blame you
for everything.
For everything.
That's not
Or they're going to find reasons to blame other people, why they didn't do their workouts, why they didn't stick to their diet and stuff and everything else. So technically, by you putting out negative content, you're only going to attract negative people, which ultimately then are going to be a hell of a hard to work with.
Yeah, yeah. Martin, thank you very much. Really enjoyed that, and I think there's a lot to digest there for people. Hopefully keep building on that space. I know the project of One Creative is a big thing at the moment, and maybe finish. I suppose that could be a finisher. Yeah. Could you just share exactly what that offer is?
So at the minute, I really look at sort of my role is to open people's awareness to what personal brand is. Pretty what we're talking about there. To allow you the opportunity to create, you to be the choice to create, that in a roundabout way, you eliminate your competition by creating a category of one. No one's better at being you than you, and we want to give people the confidence to be you. We want to then allow consultants, advisories, mentors and things to basically then leverage their journey and their expertise to put themselves out there to take their impact and add it on and pass it on to other people. So at of one, and we call it of one because it's help people create a category of one, we have created our signal package, where ultimately someone that wants to establish, technically most people have a personal brand. We want to help them put a wee bit more intention, a bit of a spotlight, almost a signal up in the air, like a bat signal, to let people know what it is they're doing. As part of the overall package, it'll be offered as photography, imagery and stuff and everything else, video. We'll also then help you design. We'll not help you, we will gauge you in your background and come up with a logo for you. And I know we've done recently one for you for a project coming up, and you loved the levels of detail that was in it. And then also offer a landing page in terms there as well. But also to help with brand continuity and how you show up. We also offer social media templates and things and all to bring that on. But a lot of what we do falls under the consultancy side. To be able to do all of that, we want to know as much about you as possible. I want to know about your journey. I want to know about how you've got to where you are, but ultimately I also want to know where you want to go. I want to know who you want to go there with, who the clients you want to attract, what their struggles are. What are the solutions you're going to offer, and how we can then help you leverage your story to attract those people. So ultimately, it's a big step into the personal brand world to allow you to build the credibility and the authority that's going to position you as the first choice within your industry.
That's, brilliant. And I can back that up, because what I have sitting ready to go, I'm so impressed with it, and there's such a story in it that I didn't realise that the original the conversation was, a 6-hour conversation, I think over a few different meetings. But what I got and how that was layered into the brand package that I have ready for the launch of this new product, I was blown away, absolutely blown away. So it's definitely something I'd recommend if you're a startup or you're in business and you're looking to build your brand or rebrand or anything like that, to get in touch.
I mean, personal brand's funny at the minute as well. It's the first people that sort of really are trying to jump onto it as almost entrepreneurs or solopreneurs and things. But we're actually seeing a big move within the corporate world.
Yeah.
We know recently that PayPal put out a job advertisement for £250,000 a year to be a personal brand for the board. In the corporate world, there's multi different facets to it. In the corporate world, that they're really pushing board members to grow their personal brands, particularly from an investment perspective. If, for example, a board, like big companies are on the stock market and you're going to invest in that stock, you want to know who's making the decisions at the top. Can you trust those decisions? Will that business be here in 5 years' time? Will that stock be worth more than what it is now based on those people making those decisions? So they know that. But even in the terms of, we're seeing a lot of CEOs move towards it, almost for their own career path. A CEO who may be in charge of a £5 million business, but ultimately has the plan to be in charge of a £50 million business or a £200 million business. So it's almost not that idea of, right now, once I'm a CEO, I'm finished. So it's almost to document those stories and how they take them along. But also I had a really good example recently that I was speaking to someone and they had been part of a business for 10 years that helped it scale from 10 million a year to 150 million a year. And all of a sudden, the business was going in a different direction, he was told one day, and he was paid off. And I had been speaking to him beforehand about personal brand, and he came back to me and circled back and says that I know now what you're talking about. If I had documented what I've been doing in that business, I wouldn't be starting from scratch.
Yeah.
So it's almost documenting what you're doing. So whether it's an individual or solopreneur or entrepreneur, or you're part of a corporate, but even with that, it's basically a resume. If you document what you're doing, so whether you're ever out going on your own or whether it's just going to allow you to position yourself. So it's almost one thing with recruitment is you could be potentially headhunted for your dream job based on your personal brand and what it is. So you don't necessarily have to work for yourself.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity for you to distill your expertise and put it out into the world again to make you a category of one, but make you a first choice.
Yeah. Brilliant.